Well,
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
we can hear you.
Yes.
That's about.
It's 3:30. I think we could go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
Well then, fantastic. Should we start with a call to order? With a
Yes.
And then ask for a roll call.
and then a roll call, please.
Commissioner Burling,
No, it's
Is it bring your own or?
we can share, but
That's fine, I can just.
She-
I read it before I came over.
you did? Okay, yeah, I guess you're supposed to.
Yvette, we would like to have a roll call, please.
okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Not very well. Can,
Not well.
Can your volume come up?
Sebastian, what do I need to do? Okay, hopefully that helps. Okay, let's start over. Commissioner Burling?
Here.
Commissioner Cadell?
Here.
Vice Chair Myers?
Here.
Commissioner Sowers?
Here.
Thank you.
So we have a quorum, Yvette?
Yes.
Well, then let's have a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Love that.
It's been a while since we've done that.
Okay, let's see. The first piece of our business today will be public appearances. Members of the public are entitled to speak on matters of municipal concern, not on the agenda during public appearances. Each person's comments shall be limited to 3 minutes or as otherwise established by the commission. Matters not appearing on commission's agenda will not receive action at this meeting, but may be referred to staff for a future meeting. Persons are not required to give their names, but it is helpful for speakers to state their names so that they may be identified in the minutes of the meeting. With that, is there anyone from the public that would like to make a public appearance? Looks like we have a hand. Hi there, Amy.
Hey there, everyone. It's nice to see you all live there. And at the beginning of this meeting, I noticed that there were some auditory problems. I've been trying to go back into old meetings to glean some information, and the recordings of your meetings are almost unintelligible. So I was hoping that something could be done to look into that so that if we're not able to attend the meeting, we can go back and find out what happened.
You're
That's
just
all.
referring to the sound, not the content, right?
Yeah, the auditory part, yep.
Have you tried the YouTube?
When I searched it on YouTube, it didn't come up, the special meeting that I was looking for in November. But I can do that. And you think the volume is better on YouTube?
I think so. I'll find it and send you a link.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And Ramey, just to chime in, this is Yvette. I think that IT is aware of the situation because yes, we had the same problem on our end as well when we were listening back to it. So I think it's something that they're currently working on. And then just as a reminder, since everyone's back in chambers, while you're speaking, as far as the commissioners, please make sure to speak directly into your microphone and to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to make an appearance? All right, it doesn't look like it, so we'll move on to announcements. Do we have any announcements?
I do not this time.
Okay, we have no announcements, so then we'll step into the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are routine in nature and do not require discussion or independent action. Members of the Commission or the public may ask that any items be considered individually for purposes of commission discussion and/or for public comment. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions. So the first item on our consent agenda is to approve the March 10th, 2022 special meeting minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second it.
Yvette, can we get a roll call on that?
Who said motion to approve?
That's
Commissioner
Commissioner
Cadell
Cadell.
and Commissioner Burling seconded.
Okay. Commissioner Cadell, I don't know, is your microphone on?
Who?
Yes.
Okay, now I can hear you. Okay, can you say it again? Just because we didn't hear that the first time.
Yeah, just motion to approve.
And
Okay.
second it.
Perfect, thank you. All right, Commissioner Burling,
Yes.
Commissioner Cadell,
Yes.
Vice Chair Myers,
Yes.
Commissioner Sowers.
Yes.
Thank you, the motion is passed.
Okay, moving right along into our public hearings. The first item under public hearings is the release of a stop work order at Mission Street, 4th, southwest of 10th Avenue. And I believe I'm going to hand this over to our forester.
Yep.
Sarah.
Thank you. This is an item that we heard at our last meeting. So a stop work order was placed on the property Mission 4 southwest of 10th Avenue. The stop work order involves some unpermitted construction as well as an unpermitted tree removal. So you can see from the previous staff report and the pictures attached here that there is evidence that there definitely was a tree there. And we have no record of a permit application being filed. Last month at the March 10th meeting, the commission decided to table this topic until the property owner or the tree service could be present to provide more information. I had a conversation today with the property owner and provided the information to call in, and I'm not sure that I see him. There is a phone number that ends 918. Mr. Cosmero, is that you? So it is not.
Well,
It's 918. If you would to unmute and say who you are, please.
Hand went up.
Hand went up.
Oh. You have to unmute yourself. If you're on a phone,
This is
try.
Greg Cosmero here.
Yay!
There you go.
All right, Greg. So,
Sorry, I had to try to unmute. I forgot what the code was for the unmute.
all right, that's great. So, do the commissioners have any questions for me?
Well, can we ask who was on the phone?
Yes, that's Greg
Sure.
Cosmero.
Yes, sir.
And
Greg
as I understand
Cosmero,
it, Mr. Cosmero is both the owner of the property and Cosmero Construction,
Correct.
and he
Correct.
retained Cruz Tree Service to take down the tree.
Correct.
Correct.
And who was it that said they thought they had a permit, or that a permit had been applied for? Was that Cruz Tree Service, or was that Mr. Cosmero?
That was asserted by both parties. So, Cruz Tree Service said that they applied for the permit as well as Mr. Cosmero.
Okay.
Sarah, I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm gonna
no,
have
I
to-
didn't.
Oh,
Mr.
hang on a
Cosmero,
second.
Mr. Cosmero, I'm sorry. Commissioner Cadell, we cannot hear you.
Okay, let me,
That's so much better. Thank you.
So, Mr.
Just
Cosmero-
let me repeat.
just for a point of order, Mr. Cosmero, if you would please refrain from making any comments at this juncture. The commission is, at this point, asking questions of the forester, and there'll be an opportunity for you to speak, okay?
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Okay. And my question was, for the record, so we have it clear in the record, as I understood it, there was a representation, Mr. Cosmero is on the line. He's the owner of the property and the Cosmero Construction, the builder.
Correct.
He retained Cruz Tree Service to take out the tree, and apparently both Cruz Tree Service and Mr. Cosmero represented that a permit to remove the tree had been applied for, but it's clear that no permit was issued.
Correct. I did research through our database where we track the permit applications. There was no permit for that property for a tree removal under Mr. Cosmero's name or the previous owner, whose last name was McDonald. I also went through my email inbox to see if there was an application that was emailed directly to me, and I did not find one.
Okay.
Any other questions from the commission for Forrester? I have one then. Sir, we had asked if it would be possible to learn anything else about the tree itself. Were you able to uncover any additional information of what kind of tree, how tall it was it healthy, et cetera?
Yes, I spoke with the next door neighbor who had seen the tree, and they reported that it wasn't in the best of health and that it had lost the top in a previous storm. Mr. Cruz from Cruz Tree Service also reported that it was not in the best of health and that it did lose its leader in a storm.
Okay, thank you. No photos were able to be found anywhere?
No, I did look through Google Street View back in time, and it wasn't clear to be able to tell what condition the tree was in, nor really see it because of the angle of the car.
Got it, thank you. Bob, at this point, would I open it up to the public to ask Sarah any questions, or no, not at this point?
No, I think
That's
it's
later.
next would be appropriate to ask the applicant, who's this person, to, they want to have some comments.
Perfect, thanks. Got it. Okay, Mr. Cosmero, if you would care to speak to this issue, we would appreciate it.
Sure, absolutely. Sure. So yes, when I purchased the property, I was in contact with Rob Thompson from Thompson Wildlife Management, Environmental Management and Conservation Services, and he came over in September to do an assessment on the tree, on the pine tree. It was a pine tree, and he looked at it and basically said, yes, the tree is in bad shape. All the branches are on one side. It's leaning. There should be no reason why, this shouldn't come out. And, so I said, okay, great. He told me that he would write a letter if need be to the city, but he said most of the time the city has their own forester. They come and take a look at it, so forth, but he would do that if I needed it. So then I contacted Cruz Tree Service about pulling a permit. I asked him if he could do it since that's what he does, and he was with Carmel all the time, and he said, sure, no problem. Well, this was back in October now. And so anyway, so we waited. I waited, 2-3 months or whatever it was until December. And I kept checking with him, hey, any word? And then finally he said, yeah, I got approvals for the tree. And I said, okay, great. And I guess, so he went in to get the permit, and I think it was in December. I don't know if it was the middle of December, and towards the end of December. And then was told, there was no, they couldn't find anything in the system because the previous employee, Mike Tope, who Cruz was talking to the whole time to approve the tree being removed, I guess it was no longer working there. and that and so that they couldn't find any record of it and so forth. And then so he was scheduled to cut the tree on a Saturday, and a Friday he wanted to get that permit. And then on Saturday when he came, he said that, I wasn't able to get the permit, but it's just a technicality because, Mike's not in the office with COVID and so forth, but he'll be back and there should be no issues. And I said, okay, well, if you're sure there's no issues, it's fine. And so we did it. And that's the short end of it. I thought, it was approved, and now that, Mike Tope, I guess it's Mike Tope is no longer there, that he was the one who approved it. So anyway, so yeah, that's why I hired all these guys to do the job. I didn't go in there with a chainsaw and try to cut down the tree myself. I hired professional licensed guys to do the job. And that's basically, where we're at. They took the tree away. I think I do have some photos of the tree, though, actually, that I could definitely provide to you guys.
Can I ask some questions of the applicant?
Please, Mr. Cosnero, thank you very much. We'll open it up to the commission and or the director to ask any questions.
All right. Hi, Mr. Cosmero. I'm Bob Herreri. I'm the Director of Public Works. I have a couple of questions about what you just mentioned. I want to dissect it a little bit deeper. First of all, the good news, apparently you do have some photos. If you would provide those to the forester as soon as you can, that would be really appreciated. Going back to, we understand that you contacted the Thompson Wildlife Management and the guy did an assessment. Sounds like he recommended removal, which that's a good first step. It sounds like you asked your tree service, Cruz Tree Service, to get the permit. But what I don't understand is that then you claimed that Mike Tope, who is one of the city's, who's no longer here, but he was one of the city's senior maintenance workers, who is also an arborist, he went out and looked at the tree, and he said that it was okay to remove. Did he issue a permit? Did he put anything in writing? Did he say that that the permit would be forthcoming? Because he didn't have the authority.
I don't know.
He did not have the authority,
I
and
don't
he
know
well
if he
knows
did.
this, to approve removal. But what he could do is recommend approval once the permit was routed for approval.
I see. Well, he might have done that. I never had spoke to Mr. Tope. I was just going off of what Cruz Tree Service was telling me when I talked to him about what was the status of it, and he never actually said Mike Tope's name. He just had told me it was the guy there, and after speaking with Sarah today, I guess I found out that was Mike Tope he was talking to. So at the time, I know that he was asking me for the owner information for the permit, and I would send it to him a couple times, and it kept coming up as the old owner on the permit, and I was telling him, no, it's not the old owner, that's not the owner. So there was a little bit of issues with that. But like I said, that's all I know is that he was in charge of getting the permit, and that he called me and said, yeah, we got it approved, and and he scheduled it.
So would it be, just kind of follow up, would it be fair to say that you relied entirely on Cruz Tree Service to obtain the permit, and whether he did or not is a separate story, but that's where you were getting your information from, was from Mr. Cruz, because like you said, you didn't speak directly to Mike Tope, you spoke to Mr. Cruz.
Correct.
Is that correct?
I did, and I don't want to throw anybody. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but yeah, I mean I was counting on him to get the permit, and he told me he would take care of the permit. So yeah, I was relying on him.
That's all I have.
Commissioner Cadell?
Mr. Cosmero, one of the things that we are concerned with is not just what happened in this instance, but what's the problem or the potential for repetition. And do you have a business, Cosmero Construction, or is this a one-time thing? Are you just developing this one house for yourself, or what's your business interest in the house and your relationship to the city of Carmel?
Well, I mean, I'm a licensed contractor in the city of Carmel, and that is my residence. And yes, we are planning on, fixing it up and selling it.
Okay, and you have other houses that you presumably have done this before, and you're going to continue doing it in the future?
I'm hopeful to do that, yes.
Okay. And then where does Cruz, is
Yeah,
Cruz?
believe me, I won't be doing this again with a tree. I mean, honestly, I was going off of what I was told that it was approved, and then it was scheduled, and then it just, and then it didn't happen. So yeah, I mean, it's not something that's going to be repeated.
I mean, it's certainly arguable that ultimately it's your responsibility as the contractor, right?
Yes, yes, it is.
So is Cruz Tree Service, where are they? Because I heard something that suggested they do work here, but they're not located in Carmel, or where is Cruz Tree Service located?
I have no idea where they're located. Here, not too far. Hollister, maybe. I don't know.
I don't have their address readily available. They are a licensed tree
They're
service.
filed with you guys.
And they also have provided the proper insurance documents to the city to go with their license.
Okay. And Mr. Thompson, it's wildlife management? Is he an arborist, or, I mean, wildlife management
Yes,
I think of as,
Animals.
but,
He's a licensed arborist, yes.
okay. And
Certified
so,
arborist. I could give you his number if you want his license number and phone number.
well, I don't know that I need to talk to him, but I'm just thinking you might want to get a report from him on the condition of that tree, since he apparently inspected it. And that might help if it turns out that in fact the tree was at risk or was in poor health. That might help us make a decision on what the cost would be, or the fine and that sort of thing, and then and moving forward. So you might want to reach out to Mr. Thompson and ask him to provide a report to the city. That could be very helpful to you if in fact he would say that he inspected the tree, and in fact in his opinion the tree was in poor health and should be removed.
Yeah, and I have an invoice from him from going there to do that assessment. So, and he has spoken to me about providing the letter if needed. So I could definitely give him a call.
Okay.
Any other questions from the commissioner to Mr. Cosmero? Mr. Cosmero, I have a follow-up question to Commissioner Cadell, and that's in regards to you being a licensed contractor in Carmel. Just curious how long you've had your license and been practicing as a contractor in Carmel?
I've had my license since '97. I've been in Carmel since probably 2016-ish, but been in Pebble Beach for 2 years, but from 18 to 21, and now I'm back in Carmel.
Got it. And then as a follow-up to that, would you say that you're very familiar with the rules around trees on properties in Carmel-by-the-Sea?
I would say I'm familiar, but not. I don't think I've honestly pulled a permit to have a tree pulled in Carmel on any job.
Okay, thanks. And then my last question, it was, again, follow-up on on Rob Thompson. You said you have an invoice for his assessment, but he never actually did end up writing a letter. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, the assessment was just to look at it, and the invoice was for his time to look at it, and to write a letter is another fee, which he said I may or may not need at the time, and if I did, then to let him know.
Okay, thank you. And no one else from the commission has anything else for Mr. Cosmero? Okay, I should open up to the public for any comment.
I do want to make one reminder, the stop work order has been in place for 2 months now. So if we ask him to bring more documents back, that would be an additional month that his construction is delayed.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone from the public care to make a comment regarding this? Without seeing any hands, then I'm going to go ahead and bring this back to the commission for discussion. Anyone care to start us off?
Well, I will. I mean, I'm still troubled, and I get that we want to move on and let the contractor move on. But I'm also, again, a little disturbed by the fact that we're just finding out now, after a month later, that supposedly someone actually looked at the tree, Mr. Thompson, offered to write a letter, never did. And obviously, if you were going to remove a significant tree, you would have wanted, I say you, I mean the city forester would have wanted an arborist report before okaying that or authorizing that, or certainly would have wanted to look at the tree and that sort of thing. So I'm troubled by that. So I don't know. I'm torn. I mean, I think probably waiting another month and getting him, Mr. Cosmero, to produce a letter from Mr. Thompson. And I would think Mr. Thompson, if he went out and inspected the tree, probably has photographs. I'd also like to see the invoice from Mr. Thompson to Mr. Cosmero for inspecting the tree so that we can identify the time that occurred. You know, that's what I would ordinarily do in sort of due diligence and looking at something like this, trying to drill down on it. And I'm still troubled by the fact that we haven't seen anyone from Cruz Tree Service who presumably should have known what they were doing. And we have this whole thing about Mike Tope when, you know, he was a longtime employee, and I don't know that, I find it very hard to believe that he represented to someone that they could take a tree out. You know, and it's convenient that he's gone now. So I'm bothered by that, and I'm bothered by the fact that we haven't seen anybody from Cruz Tree Service here. And again, part of this is, it's not being punitive, it's that we have a tree that it's been represented to us was not healthy, but we don't have any evidence of that. It was clearly a significant tree in terms of its size, and it was taken out without a permit. And we, last month, said we'd like to hear from not just the contractor, but the tree service. We'd like to know what's this about a permit being issued. And the tree service isn't here. And this is someone that supposedly should know what they're doing. And so I'm troubled by that. I really am. You know, it just doesn't seem right.
Yes, Director.
Am I supposed to comment on that, or is that just for in general?
Mr. Cosmero, at this point, right now, we've taken this back to commission. If there are any questions that the commissioners might have, we will redirect them back to you specifically. So thank you.
I have two questions as director. Two questions for the city forester. One was the stop work order for the building part. Do we know what the status of that? In other words, if the building part of the stop work order is still in effect, then delaying or carrying forward this to a next meeting, it wouldn't really have an impact on the ability to construct, or do you know?
I am not aware if the order for the other violations have been lifted.
Okay.
I believe that it is still in place, but I would have to defer to the planning department.
Okay, and also Cruz Tree Service apparently is from Seaside. I know you reached out to them. Have we had a conversation with them? Have they called back? Have they been at all cooperative?
Yes, I spoke with Mr. Cruz prior to the last meeting to get information from him and made him aware at that point that this matter would be heard at the commission. Followed up with an email for the date and the time. and also before this meeting, again, followed up with an email with the date and time, and did not get a response.
And if I might, City Forester, what are the other violations in the other stop work order? Because I'm not sure I was aware of that.
The building.
Yes.
Well, this is probably not the forum to discuss the building-related permit violations, but just, I think the big
I'm
picture
just
here
for
is.
point of information.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not
The
gonna
point is,
discuss
there
those.
were violations relative to the building permit process. So what those are in particular, this would probably be a tough battle, or a tough issue for us to dissect at this time.
Okay, okay.
Commissioner Sarah?
No, I didn't understand what you said, Sarah, about it's already been 2 months, and was there a problem if we delayed it again?
No, that would just further delay the restarting of the construction by another month. So that would be his property being sitting for 3 months where they can't perform any work.
But we don't know where the building process is of those violations, so they could still be under those violations as well, and we don't know where those are.
We could ask the applicant.
It seems to me we don't, I hate to put things off, it really slows everything down, but I agree with you, Mike, that we don't seem to have the information we need, actually.
And we've requested it.
Mr. Cosmero, could you, are you able to respond to the status of the other stop work orders that are in place right now?
Only aware of the stop order for the tree and the work that was done on the back, the tree.
Okay. I don't know if I felt like that helped. Commissioner Bryant, did you have something to say? Anything additional to add?
No, I think I'm kind of in agreement with the fellow commissioners on getting more information. We've asked for it and requested it a couple times, and we're kind of waiting.
Right. Okay. Well, from my perspective, I think I find myself aligned. Number one, the notion that the permit wasn't issued as a technicality due to COVID, I really feel like a licensed contractor that's doing work in Carmel knows better and is well aware of how the city treats our trees. And I mean, shoot, we're in the paper practically every week, so it's not as if it's a secret. I feel like that the fact that a matter that happened on a Saturday ended up being more of a matter of convenience, especially perhaps outside of the public or city purview. I would definitely be a part of a notion that would put this off until we received additional information, specifically the assessment of the tree. And it seems like this fellow, Rob Thompson, who did take a look at it and provided an invoice for it, would be knowledgeable. And I think that would at least help us.
And Mr. Cruz.
And
Well, I would move that we table this until our next meeting, at which I would like to see the invoice from Mr. Thompson, a report from Mr. Thompson as to the condition of the tree when he inspected it, along with the date of when he inspected it, and any photographs that he took of the tree. And then I'd also like to hear from Mr. Cruz with Cruz Tree Service to explain this whole issue of the permit.
That in?
Yeah, that's it.
I second it.
okay, if we could get a roll call.
Commissioner Burling,
Yes.
Mr. Cadell,
Yes.
Vice Chair Myers,
Yes.
Commissioner Sowers.
Yes.
The motion has passed. And just one more time, I'm sorry, commissioners, to keep saying this over and over, but it's very, very important that when you're speaking, sitting back in your chair is not going to work. We have to have you speak directly into the microphone, please, or move the microphone right in front of you, because it is very, very hard to hear in there as well as it is on the outside. So please make aware of that situation. Thank you.
All those years of training have been lost due to COVID.
Yvette, will you bring a big ruler in here? Oh, ooh, the gavel.
Thank you. Yeah, if I had a gavel, I would, hit it so we could hear you guys, but thank you.
Well, don't say that, because when she's in here, she sits next to me, so, you know.
Oh, she sits next to me. All right, we'll move on. We have another public hearing, the approval or denial of a permit application to remove one oak at Dolores Street 5 northwest of 2nd Avenue. Over to Forester Sarah.
Thank you. Lawson, the property owner of Dolores, 5 northwest of 2nd Avenue, and they've submitted an application to remove one significant oak tree from their property in order to build an addition. The tree is healthy, is in good condition, and it measures 7.6 inches in diameter. And it is surrounded by a patio, as you can see in the photo. So the Clausen's home is on the city's historic inventory, which makes it problematic for adding on, as the house is situated at the back of the lot. And per the Secretary of the Interior, the Federal Secretary of Interior, for the treatment of historic properties, provides guidance that you should not, prohibits building new construction in front of the historic structure. So that only allows the Clausens to be able to build essentially where this tree in question is located. So in the code, in order to allow the removal of the significant tree, the commission would have to find that the 4 criteria spelled out in the code are met. So first being that the construction doesn't cover more than 1/3 of the property. And that second one over here, that the trunk does not adequately, that the tree does not adequately or particularly provide space for the development. And we can't offer a variance to the historic designation on this property. And that the failure to authorize this removal would deprive the owner of reasonable economic use of the property. So it is my opinion that, and my recommendation, that we allow the removal of this tree and require 2 upper canopy trees to be planted.
Thank you. Does anyone from the commission have a question for Forester Sarah about what she just presented? Commissioner Cadell?
City Forester, the designation of a historic property,
Yes.
and you told us something I'd not heard before, that the Secretary of the Interior has issued certain regulations or conditions with respect to development or enlargement of a historic property. So this is beyond simply on some list at City Hall here in Carmel. This is a federal designation of some kind?
So according to the senior planner that's associated with this item, she provided the materials. So it is the U.S. Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties, and it has guiding principles for the rehabilitation of historic properties, and precludes addition to the front of a historic building. So those are guidance. That's guidance at a federal level.
Okay, but in certain circumstances, and I'm curious to know if this is one of them, designation of a historic property carries with it certain tax benefits, rebates, things of that nature. Do we have any idea if there are any of those financial benefits associated with this designation, in this case, that they get by virtue of the historic designation?
I am unaware of any of those benefits. I know about the tree.
Okay, all right, okay. Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Let's see, do I?
Commissioner Sarah?
I'm on, yeah. My wait, here, am I close enough? It
Get
says
closer.
6 to 10, let's see, that's about, we do need that ruler. That better?
Yeah.
Can you hear me, Yvette?
Yep.
Maybe not.
I can hear you. Just go ahead and put the microphone actually right in front of you. You can slide it over
Okay,
and then
good.
put
We'll try
the
that.
microphone as
Yeah.
close to your mouth as possible.
It seems to me that what has been designated by the city as historic is very firm, whether it's a federal thing or not. It's, people have tried to change it sometimes to have more flexibility. There is an advantage, and I can't, what's it called, Bob? There's some ruling that you do have an advantage if it's historic in terms of
But so your home can be historic, but it also has to be designated around that particular designation to get the tax benefits.
Okay.
So it's actually an application that you have to file on top of the fact that it's historical designation. It's just not given to every home that's historic.
Okay.
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 But it has to be, it's a petition, and it's very specific, and it has to be given by the planning commission, I believe, as well as.
I think city council
city,
maybe, but
so,
yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it's just not just because it's historic.
Just a reminder to our commissioners, at this point, we are simply asking questions of our forester, of specifically of what she's presented. So let's stay on that task, please. Are there any other questions? Is there someone representing, or is the applicant on the line? And would like to make
I
a-
do not see them. They were informed of the
Aaron-
time
Who's
and
Aaron
date.
Clausen?
Who's Aaron Clausen?
Aaron Clausen. is
Oh,
on
where? Oh, there's Miss Clausen. Can you unmute yourself? Try *6. We still can't hear you, Aaron.
Did she say star stick?
6.
Six. Oh, star six.
Ms. Clausen, would you like to hang up and call back in, or can you identify yourself in any other way? Should we give her a few minutes and
She is the applicant, so I would give her a couple more
Yeah,
minutes.
that's you.
let's do that?
Does she have a telephone number?
Does she have one?
Does she have the telephone number? She wants to dial in.
I'd like to try to find it.
Do you have her number, Sarah?
I have her designer's phone number.
Could trouble you for a little while there.
Oh, no.
Yeah, let me see if I can get it.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Quite a crowd we have here today. Oh, someone new just dialed in. I see that someone with a area code 415 is just dialed in. Are you representing or a part of the applicant for this public hearing?
No, I would just wanted to hear about the benches. If I'm not too late, I apologize for being tardy.
Nope, no worries. We haven't got there yet. If you wouldn't mind putting yourself on mute, we would appreciate it.
Aaron, we still can't hear you. Can you hang up and dial back in? The phone number is at the top of the agenda.
Should I open it up to public comment before we bring it back?
They can't comment without the applicant speaking first.
They can't make any comments about what was presented by the forester?
I believe, Michael, I think we can table this until a later.
Yeah, we could move it
this
till later in the
to
meeting.
Last item on the
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah,
Great.
yeah.
Okay, per commission discussion, and thanks to some creative thoughts from our director, we'd like to move this public hearing to the last agenda item, so that it'll give Ms. Clausen an opportunity to get back in communication and be able to speak to this. So
Stay tuned.
stay tuned. Thank you. Let's go.
May I have just a moment so I can communicate the Clausen's phone number to Yvette so she can give them a ring, please?
Sarah? So what I could do,
I just text it to you.
okay, perfect. I'll try to get her on the line.
Yeah,
Hold
Okay,
on
great.
just a moment.
Thank you.
down to here. Okay. Oh, here. I'll be here. We'll do it here. All right, then let's move right along to our orders of business. Orders of business are agenda items that require city council, board, or commission discussion, debate, direction to staff, and/or action. And the first order of business is the discussion around Scenic Pathway benches, recommendations for data collection. Kind of got that out. There we go. Let's see, who am I turning that over to?
That would be me.
Okay, our forester, Sarah.
Okay, so as conversations have been taking place with the Forest and Beach Commission about providing a recommendation back to the Planning Commission on the addition of new benches, the conversation has gone towards finding out what the public in general thinks and feels about the benches and the addition of additional benches. So the discussion now is on what method we want to employ to collect that information and able to, for the commission to form their recommendation. And keep in mind, ultimately, the Planning Commission does have the final authority on the approval of more benches. So I want to start by saying about Scenic Pathway. A very esteemed landscape architect once took me through this little journey of there's two types of spaces outside. There's spaces that you travel through, so they're a path, or they're a place. It's something you go to stay and to participate in. So is my perception that our community sees the pathway as a path. It's a through place. However, our visitors see the pathway as a place. So I just wanted to put that into your minds while we're thinking about the methods that we can use. So what I've put together is a list, and we can check off the boxes as we go along as to which methods you would like to employ to collect people's opinions. So just real quickly, we have print advertisements, surveys, and online surveys. So the question is, would you like to use print advertisements to encourage people to fill out the questions we provide them? So that could be things like the pine cone, it could be newsletters with the Carmel Residents Association, it could be house of worship bulletins, that sort of thing. So is print advertisement?
So, Sarah,
Yeah.
I suggest, why don't you go through the rest of it,
Oh, okay.
all the slides, and then we'll go back page by page.
Oh, okay.
Because I think we need to see the big picture here first.
Yeah, so we want to talk about methods, and then we also want to talk about how we want to frame the questions. What tone do we want? Do we want to talk about a need, or do we want to ask questions around a want? Because those can appear very differently. And two, we have kind of this list of things that we also need to consider as we choose which methods we want to employ. So questions such as who is going to distribute this material, and who is going to collect this data, and who is going to synthesize it back for the group to look at. We should establish a time frame for the activity, so we should have a start time and an end time. And ask, do we want the information we're collecting to be anonymous, or do we want it to be associated with a specific person? And will the respondents be limited just to residents, or would the respondents also be the general public, maybe perhaps visitors that come to our community that use the pathway? And are there other stakeholders related to the pathway that perhaps we're not thinking of targeting? And lastly, should the commission create an ad hoc committee to lead in this activity? So those are things to keep in mind as we're thinking about going through the different methods. Are we good? Are we on the same page? Yes? All right. So, would you like to take the route of using print advertisements?
So what are you thinking? There would just be a, is that okay if I go ahead?
Yeah, get closer.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Sorry, Yvette. Are you thinking there just would be like an advertisement in the pine cone and people would respond to it? Okay.
Yes, that's one option. So we can purchase advertising space and publication of your choice, and create an ad, essentially, that has instructions to where to get a physical copy of the survey, perhaps, or respond digitally. So it'd just be a way to publicize that this survey is open.
We would need to add a few other things, the advertisements, if we were doing that, I think.
Yes, definitely. This is not a finite list. This was just my initial thoughts on places that you might choose to go.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it seems to me this is, Cadell, sort of a threshold issue is, and maybe two threshold issues. One, and Sarah has flagged both of them. One is residents and or non-residents. I don't think we are very open to visitors. We attract tourists. I mean, that's just the nature of our city, and if you don't like tourists, then you probably should go live somewhere else. And so the tourists support a lot of business in town and restaurants and shops and things like that we all like or take advantage of. So I think it does make sense, and ordinarily I'm somebody who would just say, let's just consult the people who live here. But actually, I think it probably makes sense to go ahead and consult visitors as well. But I'd like to know whether it's a visitor or a resident who's giving me an opinion. So I would say, yeah, let's, and so, a direct mail to residents would be helpful. But then an ad in the pine cone, you're going to get, who doesn't, when they first came to Carmel, pick up the pine cone and, if nothing else, look at the police log and laugh about some silly thing. And so I would do both, but I do think it's important that people identify themselves, and if they're a resident, they need to associate with a property or something like that. I also don't want to simply have someone flood the ballot box with a lot of responses if you don't have any way of identifying that this is just the same person voting 50 times or something like that. So that's one threshold issue. Second threshold issue, it seems to me, is, and I hesitate to say this because I don't want to sound harsh, But to me, the issue should be, do we need more benches? Do we want more benches? While I am sympathetic to someone wanting to make a memorial for a loved one, someone who may have sat in a bench on Scenic many times, I don't think that's what we should be about. I mean, I really don't. I think that our goal should be, as Forest and Beach Commissioners, our goal should be to protect the forest and beach and protect that environment. And if we need benches, then we need benches. And then if you need benches, then I'm fine with someone, funding that and making it a memorial. That's great. But if you don't need the benches, then the fact that someone would like to have a memorial, to me, is not significant enough to warrant adding additional benches that we don't need or want. So those to me are sort of two threshold issues, resident versus non-resident. And the second is it a need for bench, or do you just want to have a memorial? And I would, as to the first, I would say be inclusive and do both. But identify whether you're a resident or a non-resident, and then that also lets you identify unique votes versus someone who's just voting repetitiously. And then the second is I would limit the issue to, do you need a bench, do you want a bench, as opposed to do you want to make a memorial. And then once you do that, then I think a lot of this becomes perhaps easier in terms of, and then I guess the last thing I would say is, I don't know that we need to be spending a lot of money on this, but that's just, I'm just not sure we really want to do that.
We do have budget that we've earmarked for outreach for the commission, so it is available.
Would that include direct mailing?
It can. I would like to point out just a couple of things. If we are collecting our data online, there is a way to restrict one response per IP address. So in theory, you could only stuff the ballot box if you went to everyone else's computer on the block and typed in your response. So point out that. However, we would miss individuals perhaps that aren't quite as computer savvy.
Well, those that might not be computer savvy might be able to also provide a written response and then a declaration where they say that they didn't submit something online.
Yeah, I mean, that's all things that we could include. As terms of direct mailing, that can be a challenge, finding the actual property owner. Because of the P.O. box situation, and we don't have the addresses. So that direct mailing could potentially be a bigger lift.
I mean, I think we could also do some handouts. I mean, I think whether it's the post office or down on the pathway itself.
That's a good idea, yeah.
The issue is who does it? That would be a question. Do we hire someone, or do we have someone like Carmel Cares do it on their Wednesday cleanup? I mean, and there might be a conflict there because they're probably more pro new benches, but I guess that's a question of conflict.
It's almost like you read my bullet points. Because the handout question is on the idea for methods, as well as places. So
I mean, ideally, I think we should try and go with what we've been successful with in other outreaches to the residents in the community about things, whether it was the pickleball courts or, I mean, I think the pathway and the benches is probably a little more up the concern chain with the residents, I believe, but I think the pathway itself would be an ideal opportunity to pass out, simple card for a response, whether they hand it back to someone that's right there, or we postmark it and they could drop it at the post office in a box or something. I think we'd get a lot of response from there, maybe even at the post office. I think direct mail is really hard here.
Could we partner with businesses in town, like say drop this off at the donut shop and you get 50 cents off, or you get an espresso or something along those lines? Is that outside of our attempt at least to encourage people to turn those in, right?
That's up to you.
Okay.
But you have to talk to the businesses.
Sure, right. We just don't identify them like, hey.
So I feel very strongly that we don't give this out that way, because then we have a lot of tourists. I don't believe the tourists should be a part of this decision. This is really a Carmel decision, I think. And a tourist might come once and think, oh, this is wonderful, we sat on the bench, we want a bench. And that really distorts it as far as I'm concerned. So I think either the mailing, which is an issue, I realize, because I mean, we'd have to go to some of the people at the post office down below too. So I wouldn't like to do it on the pathway, because I think we'd hit quite a few tourists at that. We could send to things like the CRA and the, what do you call the group at the beach?
Criminal Cares.
Yeah, Carmel Cares. The pine cone would be okay, but we should ask for an address, and then we could weigh lightly the tourists or something like that. But to me, this is very much a Carmel issue.
Well, the post office is a pretty, those are people that are typically residents picking up their mail. So, I mean, that's always been a
For the
good
most
avenue
part.
for getting
Coming in.
Not many tourists come to our post office unless they're dropping
Well, some, yeah.
dropping in the mail.
But if we asked for an address, we could weigh it ourselves a little bit then.
We
So-
could also use zip codes.
What'd you say?
We could, if, on the survey, we could ask for the respondent's zip code. That would be
Yeah.
helpful for sorting as well.
Yeah.
So your notion, or perhaps maybe the group's notion, might be that in print, we advise the residents that there is going to be a survey that will take place from a certain period of time that will have a finite conclusion. And that survey can either be done online with some sort of ability to identify yourself as a resident, or perhaps filled out and brought to the post office.
Or City Hall, yeah.
And how that, and whether or not that we have an option, if you're a visitor and you do feel passionately about it one way or the other, I kicked the bench and it really hurt, or I, sat there for hours and it was, where I got engaged, at least we have some of that opinion that comes in, and perhaps there is a way to weigh it, but again, we're just wanting to get the best recommendation to push on to planning. Is that?
Well, I think Mike kind of brought up the issue. I think getting residents, opinions on the whole bench situation, I think is an important first one of the steps. I think the other thing that Mike brought up is need, because there is a guideline that's been in place for the benches, although it has changed over the years. And I think there needs to be, and I kind of want to ask Sarah as kind of one of our supporters here on this, we need to do a little more historical review on what's gone on with the benches over the last 10 to 15 years, because there's kind of a hodgepodge here. We've got a policy that went back 10 years or 14 years ago that had a 15-year term on benches. How many of those benches that are out there now are out of term and they're no longer really inactive? And then after that policy was amended, or guideline was amended, it went into perpetuity, but there was also some confusion on, there was supposed to be maintenance fees paid, and if you didn't pay the maintenance fee, and there's some confusion about, is it annual, is it just one time? The policy guideline that we have right now is very convoluted and confusing. And I think it would behoove us to address the guideline situation as well as we go forward with our recommendation to the Planning Commission that addresses all of these issues and is a clear pathway, because I know one of the people that was going to be here today isn't here, that's been helping us through this, which is Shirley Moon. She's done research on the history on this thing, and even what had been previously presented to the Planning Commission, and the numbers of benches is not accurate on what's proposed, what's active. There's some confusion on the total count here that was presented previously to the Planning Commission. So I think it behooves us to get it accurate and address any of the issues around the policy guidelines that we could present forward to the Planning Commission about straightening it out and getting it clear for all the residents and anyone else that's reviewing, what is the whole guideline policy around the benches? Is it where we want it to be? Is it where the residents want it to be?
But along the guideline, whether it's the survey we get residents' feelings on this, in the guidelines, unless that wants to be changed, there's this whole overriding notion of need. And based on, walking the pathway, there's been data collected with timestamps and date stamps with lots of different days. And in no way, shape, or form has there ever been a point where all the benches were being used and someone was hunting for a bench. But you make a super point. If we go back and look at the conditions under which some of these benches were authorized originally, and some of which were intended as memorials, some of that may have expired.
Exactly.
And if that's possible, then I would love to, Ms. Tellep, who I think is on today, and she is someone who I think got some at least intermediate approval for a bench. There may be a bench available for her to sponsor for 15 years or whatever those conditions would be, without our having to build another bench. So, you make a super point about that. And if we went through and did an inventory and looked at the dates on some of these authorizations for these memorials, some of that may have expired, and we may have opportunities for people to do this already without needing to clutter up further the scenic pathway.
And there are a number of benches, and I mean, again, I've walked and I've looked at, there's a handful of benches that need to be replaced. They're rickety, they're not safe, and I don't, there is a, memorial plaque out there, but obviously whatever maintenance money would have been to upgrade that bench hasn't been used and is not available, and again, I'm not blaming the public works of the city for not upgrading those benches, but they're a little rickety. I know one of them, I was going to go down there with my drill and drill it into the ground because it was so rickety that someone could fall and hurt themselves. So anyway, that's beside the point here. But again, the issue is that I think the need, the feedback from the public, and understanding the historical and the guideline presentations around the bench policy would be really helpful as we try and give a forward purview to the Planning Commission.
So I'm hearing that as a future agenda item to come back with the history of the policy, and potentially inventory the benches and the dates, and
That'd be good.
the history of the guidelines as well.
Correct.
I'm a little bit concerned that we're overlapping with what the Planning Commission's authority is here. But let me make 2 comments if I may, Mr.
Please.
First of all, I think it would be very appropriate for the Forest and Beach Commission, as part of the recommendations to the Planning Commission, is, hey, update the bench policy. Because I think that would probably be unanimous that there's room for improvement, certainly. So that could be part of the recommendation. The second thing is that I'm hearing strong opinions from the commissioners today. Let me back up. What was presented by Sarah, to get the most possible cross-section of opinions, to do the maximum due diligence. Here's what we would recommend. We have, there's endless possibilities. We're trying to narrow it down to, we could get a real good sampling from the public that could inform the commission, so that you guys can contemplate, deliberate based on that information and your own experience, and make recommendations to the Planning Commission. No one is saying that you must get any information from the public, but I think there'll be a lot of strong opinions out there that you do. So I think maybe part of this discussion needs to be, to what extent does this commission want or need, there's that want and need again, want or need to get the input from the community, whether it's visitors or locals or whatever. So it's not that you're forced, we're not forcing your hands to pick a bunch of these options to solicit comments. It's certainly an option. If you want to do that, now would be the time to do so.
So,
Please.
I'd like, however we try to get the information, I do think it'd be useful to find out whether their opinion is because they think the benches are useful and people enjoy them, or whether they really want them for a memorial.
Well, I think, my concern is, I think whatever we put out there, I think we want to make it simple. Well, I don't think we
It
can
could be
ask,
simple.
yeah, I mean, if we can come up with something that's very simple, because, I mean, I'm still in going back to the policy here. This whole overriding arching issue is the need
Right.
for benches. And if, let's say all the residents, unless we're proposing that the policy be changed because the residents in a survey that we've done have stated they want more benches, and we're going to eliminate the guideline with regards to this need issue, because I think need means that there needs to be benches for people to sit on. And unless the residents are saying, we don't care about the need issue, we just want more benches.
So
And that's where I want to make sure we're clear on that, because in the guidelines today, it says there has to be need
right.
to put more benches. Now, we've been adding benches regardless of that point, but if we're asking the residents, do you want more benches, whether there's a need or not? Because if they come back to us and the overriding resident response is, we need more benches, or we want more benches. Yet, when we go there and we do all this data, we can see that there is no need because the benches are never fully occupied. What's the policy?
That's where we need to have something that says, what is your need? You know, is your need that your name can go on it later, or is it that you really want to sit down and you haven't found a place to sit down?
I would like to
so-
introduce just one more thought around inclusion. So benches are something in places of respite are something that's important for people who have physical disabilities. So I would just like to drop that into the concept of need.
Okay, so let's see, let me throw something out. So I would propose that we, looking at Sarah's chart and just sort of picking a little of this and a little of that, I would have a ad in the pine cone. People can go online or they can mail something in, and it's real simple. You know, your name, your address, which would include zip code. But I'd like to know if someone's a Carmel-by-the-Sea resident. And I think the question is framed as, does Carmel-by-the-Sea need additional benches along the Scenic Pathway for seating? And you can rephrase it however you want, but that's what we're really talking about. Do you need it for seating? We don't need it for memorials or whatever. Do you need it for seating?
So we're asking a resident, we're asking them, do you believe that we need more benches for seating?
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah. That's all I would do. And then you sort your responses, and I would do the pine cone. I would send a postcard to on direct mail. If you've got an issue with addresses, then don't send it. I mean, you don't want to waste the money. And then I would have a brochure or a postcard, a stack, at the post office. And if you want, you could have a day or two when people hand them out on the Scenic Pathway. But I don't think we need to do too much. I mean, if you do the pine cone, if you do a direct mail to local, there's 4,500 roughly addresses in Carmel-by-the-Sea, something like
Not
that?
that many.
Not that many?
3,700.
3,700? Okay.
Is that right?
Even better. And a postcard, you can get a pretty cheap rate on that. And then do some at the post office. If you want to do the Carmel Residents Association, the CRA newsletter, and the CRA Facebook and the Carmel-by-the-Sea Facebook, that's easy because that's electronic. It doesn't cost you anything really.
Yes, for Carmel should be included in a few of those.
Meaning you want to use them for communicating that there is a survey that
Yeah,
is taking
exactly,
place.
and that people
Right.
can go online or they can mail it in, either way.
Right.
Okay.
And then that's all I would do, and I would be real simple. Do you feel there is a need for additional benches along the Scenic Pathway for seating?
And maybe just have a comments field where
Yes or
people
no,
could put
yeah.
a blank comment about any.
Yeah,
because-
you.
Because there may be people that want to, so,
Give a
yeah, I
comment,
think
yeah.
I want to
For seating,
memorialize more
that's
people,
the-
or, I mean, I don't know, but
Yeah.
at least it gives us some additional feedback if there's something we're missing,
Yeah,
beyond just, the quick,
But I think the
Answer.
for seating aspect is the
So
key.
a 30-day period
of collection?
Mhm.
Does it need to be more than that?
No, that's good.
2 weekends of handing out?
Get on it or just give it.
And maybe it's a nice
actually-
way of Forest
as
and Beach
long as it-
Commission actually kind of being a part of it?
As long as there's an address on it, you can hand it on the pathway, but the pathway is where we're going to get more tourists to answer.
But again, if you separate the responses into two piles, residents
Yeah.
and non-residents,
Yeah.
then you can evaluate those based on, because I'm like you, I agree, Commissioner Burling, that the opinions of residents carry more weight in something like this, because it's their tax dollars. I mean, they're spending money on this. They live here. They are more invested than someone who comes for one weekend from Indiana or something like that. So I don't mean to single out Indiana, but, I just,
No, you're
so,
right.
but it's fine to have that. And what would be nice is, it may turn out that the responses mirror one another and the residents say the same thing that the non-residents
Yeah, I think
do.
so.
And then that would be great in terms of validation, but as long as we know, then we can make that assessment ourselves.
We can even include those of you on the point.
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
Shall I summarize?
Yes, please.
So I'm hearing that print advertisement is a yes. I'm also hearing that direct mailing is a yes, if we can figure that out. I'm also hearing handouts are a yes, targeted at the pathway. And also, it could be picked up at the post office, that we utilize our support group's social media pages to publicize the activity, and that the real question, the meat of the matter is there a need for benches for seating? And whatever we do should include some sort of an address, or verify where you're from, or if you live here or not. It should be open for about 30 days.
I'd include the Carmel Foundation where you.
Yeah. Okay, as the pickup?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Sounds like we got it. Why don't we open it up for public comment?
Well, let me, okay, go ahead.
Well, then, just as a follow on this, so this is the data collection, we've centered that down. Then I'm going to ask if Sarah could lead on the historical
Correct.
background on that as a second piece of this deal.
And maybe
I think Brandon.
Commissioner Herrera is right, that may not be our purview, and it may take the form of a recommendation.
Yeah.
But I think that's valuable information, and that may solve some of this problem if somebody could drill down on what do we have and how much of that is no longer really appropriate for a memorial and is available, is available for
We
someone
may have
else.
that information, we just don't have it with us today.
Yeah, I felt like
So-
actually when Brandon presented to us a number of meetings prior, that he gave us the history of the benches, whether or not it was accurate.
I don't remember
He told
that.
us when the first ones were put in and the time frame in which they were put in, and there was some there. Not that there can't be more information. We're not
Well, it would
completely
be
in the dark
interesting
on
to
that.
see the legend. We have a number of benches. Which benches are pre, the 15-year term, and which ones are they? Where are they at in that cycle? And which benches are the newer guideline, which is into perpetuity? And what is the policy around those? Is there a maintenance fee? Is it a one-time fee? Because there's some confusion about what's going on with this.
So it sounds like
And
that's going to become a
I'm-
future agenda item then, is that how I understand it? Because this discussion is, of
Right.
course,
Right.
about the recommendations for the
Yeah.
data collection.
Yes.
There'll probably be several agenda items coming.
Yes.
Okay.
But I think, from a recommendation standpoint, I think an issue that we can make a recommendation and they can choose to reject
That's
it
right.
if they want to do so.
Absolutely.
Sure.
But I
mean,
think it's important that we have good information.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I think
right.
there's some question about even the information that's been presented to the Planning Commission in prior
That's
Right.
meetings with them about the actual history of the benches and the
Exactly.
counts. And the counts are important because we're talking about adding benches and/or, what's going on here. And I'd rather, if there's an opportunity to correct some miscues, as a Forest and Beach Commissioner, I think that would be helpful for us because they've asked us to forward what we think the position should be.
There definitely
on
was a
benches.
15-year limit, and I don't know when that got changed, if it did get changed.
That's what the history would tell us, but also, I mean, as Mike was bringing up, what benches are where? I
Yeah.
mean,
Right,
which ones were the
right.
15s, and where are they in their cycle? And I mean, maybe that was presented by Brandon before, but I didn't see anything about that at all.
And-
Well,
And
was
that
the-
would be
was-
helpful information, not only for us, but for the planning commission.
And
Exactly.
All right, but
we can
Commissioners,
add that to the next
why don't
meeting.
we move forward
Yeah.
in allowing the public to speak specifically regarding how we have discussed this data collection?
Can I ask one more question? Are we going to want to do a walk on the pathway? We talked at the last meeting about setting up a site visit where we'd want to expose it to the public if they wanted to join in on just a walk down the pathway. And it might be helpful to have
I'm
some of
happy to do that.
some of that history on these benches before we do that site visit. So maybe our next meeting, Sarah would have that historical thing, and then when we walk, we could potentially even see which benches may be open or not. But that's just another.
Try not to kick one. Perfect.
Sorry.
Okay, I think that's a great idea. So with that being said, this discussion has been fruitful. Let's open it up to the public. Is there anyone from the public that would care to make a comment on this, the commission's discussion around recommendations for data collection specifically?
This is Dale.
Hi there, Dale. It's
Hi, how
nice
are
to
you?
hear you.
Carmel Cares. Nice discussion, commissioners. I've got more than just the data collection, if I could.
Okay, you need about 30 minutes?
I don't know. It's just a couple minutes. Clearly, as Brian stated, Shirley's our subject matter expert at this, and she had a very good reason for not being here. It's too bad that she isn't, but I'll do the best I can. As has been stated by a couple of you, I think this really is a serious issue. The bench situation is more complex than just these 16 benches because they're permanent. This is one of Shirley's big points is once it's there, it will never be removed. We see that there are some that are crumbling, as Brian stated, and they're still there and they're not going to be taken out. They'll just be replaced. So whatever locations we end up picking, it's a serious thing. It's not a simple issue either. I don't know how filling out a survey form or a postcard or checking a box is going to adequately handle this when clearly the planning commissioners who walked the whole thing with little flags in the ground really couldn't visualize what it's going to look like. Shirley's the only one that could because she actually built cardboard mock-ups of all the benches and put them physically in the locations on those 16 places and saw that some of them were awful, some were okay, but not necessary, and so on. So I don't know what you're going to get. I don't know how you'd use the data if they said, yeah, we need more benches. I don't know what good that's going to do. But, you know, if you have to do something, I guess you can do it. That's something with surveys. I've done a lot of them. And you better know what you're going to do with the data when you ask the question, because sort of like the survey on permanent parklets, you know, the city did that, advertised it a lot, did a big multiple speeches on it, and then nothing's been done. So it sort of left us with a bad taste in our mouth about that survey. So mock-ups are really required for anybody to know what this is going to look like. Brian covered this subject pretty well, so I really don't need to say much about it, but I've dug into the history of all this before, and it is convoluted and confusing, and there are multiple takes on it, and no one really understands it. So I think if you guys could research that, all the public would love to do that. And the maintenance hasn't been done. You know, there were charges done, but clearly there hasn't been maintenance done as far as I can see, and I spent a lot of time down there. And there are some benches, as Brian said, that need to be looked at, and Public Works has looked at those and done some minor repairs to them. So it is being looked at. And that should be part of the process. Finally, I understand that it was stated in the pine cone based on your last meeting that there's a moratorium on all bench installations, including ones that have been prior approved. I just read that in the pine cone. I didn't hear it from anybody else. But that's not true because there's an order outstanding for 2 benches to be installed, and Shirley did research, and it turns out those 2 benches are in fact 2 of the benches of the 16. So if they're in the exact location, they were going to put 2 benches at that location, then they could be different, but I don't think that's the case. So they're either 18 benches or they're 16, 2 of which have already been approved and could be installed while we're doing this meeting right now. if the stonemason was available. And he's our stonemason, so we know who he is. So that's all I have. And again, thank you for putting time and effort into this. It's a serious discussion. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Dale, and maybe we might need that donut or coffee sponsorship so this survey doesn't leave a bad taste in your mouth. Is there anyone else from the public that would care to comment on this discussion around recommendations for data collection?
I show that Teresa's hand is up.
Okay. Hi there, Teresa.
Hi, good afternoon, Vice Chair Myers and Commissioner members. Thank you for your time today. I have to say, I really appreciate the thoughtfulness with which Forester Sarah Davis has come up with suggested methods for gathering public input, and in an unbiased way as possible. I really appreciate the spirit of that. I also appreciate the issue of inclusivity being addressed, given that approximately half of the current benches do not meet the ADA suggested seat height of 17 to 19 inches. As some of you know, the two benches closest to the one disabled parking space along Scenic has the highest benches that are like, I think 27 and 29 inches, probably the hardest ones for anyone to get into. So I do think inclusivity should be one aspect of looking at need. I do support the city, including the current applicant families in terms of the survey. There are a lot of pending applications. A lot of us read in the Pine Cone in October that the benches were approved. We submitted applications. The appeal period, no one made an appeal officially. And just to address I hope there is some outreach done to the current applicant families who have applications pending. Our own family, we had no idea that plaques were part of the bench. We wanted to make a donation for the good of the public. Our families always enjoyed the pathway and the benches, and that was our main purpose. We had no idea that you could put a plaque on. We are willing to still donate a bench without a plaque if people object to that so much. Personally, I love the inspiring quotes that I see in the plaques. The plaques are very small. I also do hope the survey is open to all pathway users. It is a beautiful pathway used not just by Carmel residents, but also people from the county in Monterey, California, the nation, the world. And that's what makes it exciting. It's an international pathway in my mind. Also, I'd like to address that at a past meeting, Planning Commissioner Locke requested that the Forest and Beach Commission as a group actually conduct a public tour, as it has been mentioned, an inspection of the Scenic Pathway and proposed bench sites before making recommendations. So I do look forward to that date and time being addressed and announced, and I really appreciate the discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Anyone else from the public care to make a comment?
I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, well, sorry.
Me to go back, just a couple of little things to clean up. So who will be distributing these paper versions?
You're talking to the commissioners now,
Yes.
correct?
What'd you say?
Who is going to distribute the paper version of our surveys? That will be for pickup at the post office and the Carmel Foundation, as well as being handed out on the pathway. Who's going to do that?
Well, I think it's a great Forest and Beach Commission outreach, not only the survey itself, which we might want to include somewhere on the survey, just something about us, but that we're the ones that are out participating in the survey. So I would imagine most, if not all of us, would at some point or another during this 30-day period volunteer some time at the post office or in the pathway, however we might see fit. Does it need to be super structured, or we just say every Saturday of the period of time there'll be 1 to 2 commissioners at this the post office or the pathway?
Yeah. Sounds okay.
And then, Sorry?
Okay, so then,
Well, hold on, Sarah. Are you volunteering to print up those postcards for the commissioners to distribute? They're not going to magically appear.
that doesn't seem like a real heavy lift. Where there does need to be time is if it's not a standard size, I would need somebody to break apart the postcards.
Some people,
But then how do we
gonna check it out.
collect them, and then who synthesizes all of the data? If it's online, that's not a problem, because that's easy to summarize. But if there are any print versions, who's going to type that in and
Well,
synthesize?
print version, so we'd pass them out and people would either hand them back to us right there, or would there be a place for them to drop? Would they be postmarked so it could go into the post office box and just be dropped into the city post box, or what? How
You
does
have
that
to put a
work?
stamp. They could drop it in. Post
Seems like
office
if
means
it's
you've gotta have a
just,
stamp, and that's-
do you think that there's a need, is that what we're going with, for additional benches? That's pretty much a yes or a no.
Yeah.
With
With a comment field, maybe.
But
maybe a
somebody's
comment if you saw fit.
Somebody still have to go through like a big stack. Do you have teenagers you want to volunteer as data
Well, big
enterers?
stack, I mean, hey, if we get 1,000, I'd be very happy with that participation, which you could probably spin through pretty quickly.
I'd be happy to reach out to Mr. MB, who is the advisor for the high school's environmental club, and ask if he could present that to his the kids, and see if there's within that group they'd be willing to help us.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
All right, so I think that was everything I needed to be able to move forward. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Good. So it sounds like Yvette has Ms. Clausen on the line. Yvette, is that true?
That is correct. Erin, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you guys hear her okay?
Sebastian, can you turn up the speakers a little?
That's as high as they go. He has them turned up all the way.
I'm just gonna close
Okay,
it.
thank you.
I'll close it.
Okay.
Just,
Erin,
just,
go ahead.
just before we, Ms. Clausen, just one moment, please. I just would like to make sure that we've closed the discussion around the recommendations for data collection, and that the recommendations have been made. And with that, there's no further discussion at this point. Is everyone in agreement? Okay, thanks. And then we are fortunate enough to have Ms. Clausen, the applicant, on the line with us. So we are heading back up in our consent, or in our agenda, to public hearings number 3, which was the approval or denial of a permit application to remove one oak at Dolores Street 5, northwest of 2nd Avenue. Is that correct? We're on the same page?
Yes.
Great. Then thank you, Ms. Clausen. The floor is yours.
Okay, I'm sorry. I wasn't aware that you needed to speak with me today, so I don't have anything prepared. I am happy to answer any questions. We've been trying for about 2 years now to move a renovation of the Stanley property forward. The property is at this point electrical, plumbing, fireplace, several weather-related issues are all. It's all in much need of updating, and so we were trying for the last couple of years to figure out how best to tackle that and bring the property kind of up to a functional, usable state. And so we've been working with Marnie at the city planning office and an architect to try and figure out how best to kind of tackle this. And so we met with the forester when I was down probably 6 weeks ago now, to talk about what options we had, given some the historical designation and the restrictions that entails. And so at this stage, our project kind of hinges on the ability to take out an existing tree, because another tree further down the lot on the other side of the fence on the neighbor's property makes it impossible to use that portion of the lot. So we really, between the historical and the trees, essentially have sort of this one option in terms of doing anything to kind of to bring the cabin, which currently has 0 bedrooms, to a sort of more functional state as we kind of try and bring it to its next life.
Okay, thank you. From the commission, is there any, Commissioner Cadell?
Yeah.
Questions for the applicant?
Ms. Clausen, I just have one question.
Sure.
There's a significant redwood at the back of your property, just over the property line on your neighbor's property behind the house. To protect that tree, you know, the city's guidelines would typically prohibit construction within the drip line of that tree. So you've got a wooden, little wooden deck at the back of the property. I'm not sure if it's a true deck or it's just something that's laying there. So the drip line would be about a foot to maybe 2 feet towards the street beyond the end of that little wooden deck. Are you aware of that issue? And if we approve, and I think, and I shouldn't speak for everyone, but I think there's a sentiment to approve the removal of this oak, but we would want comfort that you would protect that redwood and follow the city forester's guidelines in your new construction. And then there was a significant Monterey pine apparently removed from the city's right-of-way just at the street in front of your house. And there's another one that's right next door that's going to be taken out, that's already been tagged and is going to be removed. So the city forester is recommending the planting of 2 upper canopy trees to sort of ameliorate that problem as we lose our Monterey pines and other significant trees over the years. Are you willing to work with the city forester on those issues?
Yeah, definitely. So with regard to the tree on the neighbor's property,
yes, ma'am.
When I met with the forester on the property, she pointed that out. We had a lengthy discussion about that. And her recommendation was that we could build sort of whatever that strange little platform is that has been there as long as I've been in the family, which is 25 years now. I don't know what that is, but it's always been there. But that area was basically, again, when we're going back to what the historian said in terms of what's possible, that area was kind of the only area that the historian, was allowing us to add to build on. And so in talking with the forester said her solution to that is to build on piers. She called it piers, so above ground, so not digging down at all. That it would be whatever came out from the cabin right there would be on piers, and then it would be where the tree that we're proposing to remove, that would be where we would actually dig down and be able to use a little bit to have foundation there. So anyway, with regard to that giant redwood, in discussions with the forester, she had helped us come up with what we thought was a workable plan to make sure that we addressed that tree and preserved it and didn't do anything to bring it into any harm whatsoever. With regard to to planting new trees up at the street level, we're certainly open to working that in with whatever plans we do. We, are wide open to kind of working with the city to do what we need to do for that.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Are there any other questions from the commission? Ms. Clausen, I had one question then in regards to the historian only identifying this rear portion of the property as the only place that you might be allowed to put this addition. I see that you've got a bathroom on that side, and you're saying building up on piers, wouldn't you need to be digging down in that to put a bathroom in there?
No, so the architect was with us at that meeting with the forester. So we were all, and as well as Marnie from the city, so there were 4 of us there. And that drawing he produced following that conversation. I realize that it's not a, prepare to start construction kind of drawing. It's sort of a preliminary, so there's probably some other things we need to work through before, anybody comes in to start work. But his understanding, based on talking with the forester, was that this general idea of how he laid things out there was kind of our answer to the tree issues, as well as kind of, he was feeling like it was about the only option we had. The current bathroom with a shower inside is not operable. And even if we were to bring that operable, it doesn't have headroom for anyone over about 5'8". So it's, for various reasons, needs to kind of be addressed. So anyway, the architect's planning and how he sketched that out was based upon the input from the forester. So again, while it's not a construction drawing at this point, that was his approach to answering what we needed to do with regard to that tree.
Thank you for your response. Anything else from the commission, Director? No? Open up to public? Do I open up to public comment? Yep. Like to go ahead and, is there anyone from the public that would care to make a comment regarding this application? I'm not seeing anyone's hands come up, so I'm going to go ahead and close that and bring it back to commission for discussion.
I have a question. Sarah, what's the other pine tree that's going to be cut? I must have missed that when we were visiting.
Oh, there's one just to the south that is dead, growing through the power lines that PG&E will be
okay.
removing.
And it's not on her property, is
No.
it? No, okay. So she still has that super tall one we were talking about that was 100 feet.
The neighbors,
across,
yes,
yeah.
correct.
And the one to the north, which is on
Yes.
the neighbor's property.
And we could, I don't think, Sarah, wouldn't it might make sense if we required the planting of 2 upper canopy trees for one of those to be in the city right of way. It doesn't have to be on her property, but it would replace, because that was a significant pine that was lost at the street. So if something could be planted there or nearby, that would be.
It would have to be a lower canopy tree
Because of the power
because of the
line.
power lines.
Right,
Yeah, that's
right.
good. But that
Okay.
would be okay.
Okay.
I'd just like to bring it to the commission just to make sure that we feel that all of these conditions, the 4 following criteria are being met. The existing site is vacant or is developed to extend less than 1/3 of the base floor area. Obviously, I imagine that the planning part of that will square that away one way or the other, since the applicant stated this is just a rendering, not the actual true architectural drawings. That the available land area of the site not occupied by significant trees, right? We're obviously discussing one. Just going through, the 4th one is the one that pops up into my mind. Does everyone feel that failure to authorize removal of this tree is going to deprive the owner of all reasonable economic use of the property?
Yes, I certainly agree.
Okay.
The problem I have as a lawyer is use of the term all. That's an absolute, all or nothing is the way it's presented. And obviously it doesn't deprive them of all reasonable economic use because they're using it. And it's been used for, decades as a home and that sort of thing. But I think as a practical matter, in updating the property and bringing it in line and balancing the fact that they are restricted to basically the back half of the lot because it is a historic property and you can't build in front of it, so that leaves the part of it, the front of it, off limits. I think that's the closest call, but when you say reasonable, I can live with that. But again, for me, it's a balancing. If we think we can protect that redwood, then I think it's fine to. I think we should let them do it.
I agree.
What about the notion that we're approving the removal of the tree, of course, pending the architectural drawings being completed and approved, so that the tree isn't just taken out before the plans are approved officially and move forward? Or can we make that a part of?
We can make it a condition of our approval that this has to be subject to the city foresters. They have to develop the plans, and the city's forester has to be satisfied that the redwood will be protected, and that the upper canopy trees, 2 upper canopy trees, are planted wherever is appropriate, recognizing we've lost some upper canopy trees at the street, but you've got the power line, and I defer to the city forester.
Well, yeah, the Forest Beach Commission has in the past said that you can't remove the trees until a building permit is issued.
Right.
That's what I would recommend here.
Okay.
Right, okay, thanks, that's where I was going with that, so.
Okay.
Well then, would someone like to make a motion, or is there anything else
Yours
for
is good.
discussion with this group? Was that your motion?
Mike is our authority anyway.
Well,
You have to do it again.
I just move that we accept the city forester's recommendation with one additional proviso, or 2 additional provisos. One, that the oak not be removed until a building permit has been approved, and that the building permit satisfy the city forester that the redwood on the adjacent lot will be protected, and that the city forester also approves the location of planting 2 upper canopy trees.
Or 2, could we say 2 trees, because one in that section needs to be shorter?
I defer to the city forester, that's fine. I would just, I could say 2 trees, yeah. And
I second
yeah.
it.
Okay.
Yvette,
I
would
second that I
you-
should get close to the mic.
We have a second, Yvette. Would you like to do a roll call, please?
Yes, thank you, Sarah, for getting closer to your microphone. You did great. All right, Commissioner Burling,
Yes.
Commissioner Cadell,
Yes.
Vice Chair Myers,
Yes.
Commissioner Sowers.
Yes.
The motion has passed.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, let's get back down into orders of business. We are right now going to hear from the city forester with her monthly report for March 2022.
Thank you. Alrighty, so we are talking about March here. So PG&E is starting to work in town again, removing large dead trees for us, and as well as pruning along the power lines. They started that this last week. We've also contracted out the pruning of all of the trees downtown. So 572 trees will be pruned. That work started on Monday and it's moving right along. So I anticipate that's probably going to take us 4 to 6 weeks. But West Coast Arborist is moving rather quickly, and they've already finished Ocean Avenue. So I have a lot of faith that it probably will be done a lot sooner. I participated in the Green Communities Leadership Institute in conjunction with Oregon State University. I'm one of the founding cohorts of the institute and an instructor, and Bob just wanted me to give you the highlights. It was really interesting. We had some really great conversations around equity and inclusion, and how to make spaces available for people who don't always look like us. Also, how to talk to different communities of different age groups of you, which was pretty interesting as well, as down into the details of actual tactics of how to lead individual teams through change. So that will be offered again next year, again at Oregon State University. Anyone is welcome to apply. It is application based, so we're looking for individuals that have had some leadership experience in the past and are ready to move on to that next step in their leadership journey, be it personal, work-based, or community-based. So that's it. Coming up this weekend, we have Breakfast with the Bunny in Devendorf Park, hosted by the Lions Club. I feel good that the large pine removals are starting to slow down. I was a little concerned when they had those couple of days that were really hot, and then we got some rain. So we'll see how that plays out, but the pines are dying less quickly now, which is great. We will be putting out to bid our on-call tree service contracts, and we're exploring different ways of how we do that so we can possibly get some more cost savings so our dollars go a little bit further. And we did have one notable failure. It was one of the trash trucks damaged an oak and tore one of multi-stem trees, one of the stems off. So back to the graphs. Again, the removals were high the last couple of months. So yeah, hopefully that is slowing down now with the weather. So we processed 39 applications so far, and we're doing pretty well, getting about 65% of those removals replaced with new trees. Again, this graph will look more meaningful as the year goes along, and really comparing the number of upper versus lower trees that are to be planted. Right now, it's kind of, they're about neck and neck, so they're even. So that's kind of a new trend. And here's the tree work that we've done on city trees themselves. So I'll be super excited when we come back next month, and that number of trees pruned will match these other bars. So I'm really excited about that, because when you prune trees, it's preventative maintenance. And when you take care of the trees and ensure good structure, you have fewer failures. Fewer limbs fall, fewer trees as a whole fall. So it's really a way of investing in the structure of the tree so they can so we can mitigate risk. Our regular in-state inspections are trending about normal. Again, just that one significant failure and another limb from another tree came out. Planting is a challenge because the temperatures have been getting warmer, so we don't want to do too much planting until it's a little bit cooler, but we have planting on the horizon, and been doing more site assessments for more future building. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Forester Sarah. Then let's move on. Do I need to open that up? No.
Yeah, you certainly could.
Yep, okay. Just double check. Sorry out there in the community, public at large. Would someone, sorry about that.
I've been waiting
comment.
so long to talk. Ramey Allard with Friends of Carmel Forest. Thank you, Sarah, for those great reports. They're so much easier to understand and actually digest. I just wanted to report that the Friends of Carmel Forest is looking for sites to plant. So we would ask Sarah that you could start to be putting a list together of places that we could be planting trees. It may help your less than 20% replanting numbers for 2022. I realize it is warm, but all the newest trees that we plant, we are watching closely and watering ourselves. So we would just ask for new sites that can be planted. And also, we've purchased a database for our own use. We're putting all of our own trees into that database right now. Once we get our trees loaded in there, we're going to be reaching out to the high school students, and we have a list of volunteers that has been asking us to give them some projects and jobs and things to do. So we felt we couldn't do that without having a better mapping system for them to follow. But that's it from the Friends of Carmel Forest, and we just need to know some sites that the city wants trees planted. Thanks.
Thank you, Ramey. Does anyone else from the public care to comment? It doesn't look like it, so then we will move on to our director's monthly report for February and March.
All right. Sarah, if you could put up the The cover page right there. Perfect. A, B, C, D, E. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, the first is, well, I was out last month, so kind of trying to get caught up here on forest, parks, and beach-related activities over the past 2 months. City council actions related to forestry, parks, and beach. Just a couple things. At the March 1st council meeting, the council approved a lease agreement with the Pacific Repertory Theater for theatrical programming and facility management at the Forest Theater for 5 years. Carmel Cares has been participating in the grounds care and keeping up with the benches and doing things like that, which is great. So, and that will continue. So just be aware that because the Forest Theater is also considered a city park as well as the theater itself. So that's taken over by Pacific Repertory Theater under guise of the or care of Public Works. Let's see, what else do I have? And council met last week, April 4th and 5th. There was nothing to report relative to forestry, parks, and beach. Part B, forestry, parks, and beach-related capital improvement projects. There's some more things to report there. There was a special city council meeting on March 22nd. What we did this year is we developed 6 strategies for implementing future capital improvement projects. So it's less random and more specific to overall goals of the city. Last fiscal, or this current fiscal year, which ends June 30th, we've completed 17 capital improvement projects, which is pretty good, not having a project manager. So we got something done. We're carrying over 12 of the larger projects into next fiscal year. Those are mostly, streets and drainage and facility maintenance type projects. For the next fiscal year, we introduced to the City Council 18 new projects, and I wanted to kind of drill down on that a bit. So for the new projects for the new fiscal year, the heavy emphasis is on facilities. It needs to be. We have a lot of significant deferred maintenance on a lot of our facilities. Big picture for this, again, this was just an introduction. This is not council approval yet. Facilities has a $2 million request for improvements. Streets and drainage is about $1.5 million, and the all remaining infrastructure, which includes greens and parks and beach, is $1 million. We do have a few projects that are forestry related. One is the Mission Trail Nature Preserve. We have 3 drainage projects as part of the stream stability program. So we'll be under construction in the next new fiscal year for construction of this first 3 drainage projects, and those are all located by Rio Road. So that's going forward. North Dunes, we're proposing continuation of the biology and ecology work that's been done. I believe there was a presentation last month by Agnes Martelet. So we're continuing the biological information, and we're proposing split rail fencing along Ocean and San Antonio, and an interpretive sign if we get some outside funding to support that. Also, we'll be doing a coastal engineering report. This current fiscal year, we have funding, we have not started, is a beach sand survey to see how the sand is eroding underneath our beach retaining walls and revetments. So we know we have a problem. There was a shoreline master plan that was done 15, 20 years ago. There was a lot of information from that plan, but that was never implemented. So now we need to get caught up and not redo the plan, but refine the plan to be more specific for the shoreline protection, for climate change, for sea level rise, and that type of thing. So the coastal engineering report is a $150,000 project to bolster this sand survey and really get a whole lot of information to drill down. It would also include the protection of the dunes as well as the sandstone problem that we have at the bottom of Del Mar. And sometimes we have to rope it off or we push sand up and it goes down again. So hopefully we'll have an engineering report to solve that issue someday. So we're not there yet, but at least we'll get it started. Other miscellaneous projects. I have to try to remember my notes. Oh, right outside the wall here, there's a retaining wall that has a couple of trees and bushes in it. You can see the wall is leaning. We thought at first, well, that's an easy one. We just replace the wall. Maybe have to replant the plants. But as it turns out, that's the structural integrity of our wall here is in jeopardy. So that's going to potentially be a very major project. So we are going to lose those trees, and we probably would be wise not to replant trees and shrubs in the replacement. So.
It's a shame because it's very attractive.
I think that's, we have two more here. The Parks Branch Library, the Children's Library on the east side, we replaced the backup generator, which if there's a power failure and it's raining, we don't want the basement to flood again. So that's why there's a backup generator. The old one was, very old, so we just replaced it. We had to remove three trees, three insignificant trees. And Sarah was notified about it the day after, so that was good, and she approved that. There's no one laughing. Maybe they didn't catch that. And we kind of already talked about the mission trails. So I think that's it for that. Item C is an update on the Climate Committee. It started, the first phase of the Climate Committee started to come to a head. They have now essentially a final climate adaptation plan, which does include a lot of large projects, including the shoreline repairs, the revetments, those types of things are included in that large, the plan that will be active for many, many years into the future. And at the next meeting next week, there's the Climate Action Plan, which is more administrative in nature, but it impacts home building, energy management, travel, electric vehicles, that type of thing. So those two plans are coming to a head. That's going to be presented to the Forest and Beach Commission. I don't know if it's next month or the month after. Is it next month?
I have it on the whiteboard for next month.
Yeah, okay, so next month we'll be hearing an overview of the Climate Action Plan and the Climate Adaptation Plans. That will also go to the Planning Commission, then it'll go to the City Council in probably June. Once they kind of adopt those plans, then phase 2 is actually to implement those plans for many, many, many years into the future. But anyway, so there's a lot of progress and a lot of impact across the board, everything from solar panels to beach walls and that type of thing. That's that. Volunteer organizations are focusing on Carmel Cares. If you haven't seen it, there's a really nice article in the spring 2022 edition of Carmel magazine. It starts on page 138 if you haven't seen it yet. And it's really nice. It talks about the variety of how they stepped up to help us during the pandemic, how it's been a partnership with Public Works, how the partnership has been growing. And your picture's not in there. It should have been.
It is.
It is?
Yeah.
All right, good for you.
I'm in a group photo.
Oh, is that right? Okay, good. Good for you.
I picture the one I was on the wall cutting the ivy, the ice plant back.
Oh, is that right?
I'm
Okay.
not sure whether, I don't think that was in that
Yeah.
article. That was a scary event.
There's no picture of me in it, although I was misquoted, so at least that's partial credit. Also, working with Carmel Cares and the Streets Division, we replaced some slippery flagstone at the trash enclosure at Scenic and 10th.
It looks nice.
So there's a new concrete pad and decomposed granite, so it's a problem solved. And it's a partnership. We get things done that it would be a struggle for either party to do on its own. We work together, we got it done. And also Carmel Cares volunteers trimmed excess vegetation and cleared the sand off the 4th Avenue boardwalk towards the beach. I think that's the second time around. That's a big task. There's a lot of work right there. So we certainly appreciate that. And a couple of miscellaneous, going back to Mission Trail Nature Preserve. Recently, we removed invasive seedlings from the clearing where many invasive eucalyptus and acacia trees were removed from Mission Trails. Also coordinated with the volunteers of the Friends of Mission Trail Nature Preserve to plant 75 native trees including willows, oaks, and cottonwoods, to restore native habitat in the area. So we should put the 75 into the list.
They're riparian seedlings. We'll see how many survive. You plant a lot of them to
Trying to
get a
help.
couple in the future, yeah.
Trying to help, okay. We also hired Tope's Tree Service to conduct weekly waterings on those seedlings. And Tope's, under a separate contract, completed the removal of 3 large dead pine trees in Mission Trails. So we got work going in North Dunes and Mission Trails and trying to get things started at the beach. So we're doing the best we can. And I think that is all I have to report. Be happy to answer any questions, or you can open up to the public.
So I had a couple of questions. So I know you brought up the capital projects just because I'm obviously a part of the pathway down the beach area. I mean, where are we with the reconstruction on the fencing that's going along the beach? I know we had a $50,000 at one point budget to go and start replacing those fence lines, and I know that got kind of put back until a project manager is being hired or something. I mean, is that on the project list?
That's true, a little bit outdated, but I can fill you in now. Okay, so previously, Carmel Cares offered to repair some of the, it's called the barrier rails.
Right.
The deteriorated barrier rails along Scenic. There's areas that barrier rails missing, but more often than not, there's just, you can put your finger through some of them, there's just a lot of wood rot. At the CIP meetings about a year ago now, community was vocal. The city council said, okay, well, the city will put in $50,000 of city funds to match or whatever, so to get more quantity of work done, of the same type of project. That project, I put that project not on hold, but like to line it up with the CRA's project, which I think was mentioned here at the Forest and Beach Commission, to put a zigzag split rail fence in the meeting islands along Ocean Avenue, which it still has momentum. It's going through the permit application process again. My thought was to save both the CRA and Carmel Cares and the city funding. We hire one contractor that does 2 similar projects at the same time. That more recently, the timing's too far off. So we're going to separate those 2. The zigzag barrier, the zigzag split rail fence is a little bit more, there might be a little bit more opposition, a little bit more community interest in that. Whereas the barrier rail, I think there's no opposition whatsoever. Then we talked to the city attorney's office about contractually how Carmel Cares could get that work done, if they would be required to pay prevailing wages. We are waiting for a ruling from the city attorney's office, which we believe will be good news, in that Carmel Cares can proceed, and quite frankly, Dale, I owe Dale a call, that's how recent this is.
Okay.
For Carmel Cares can proceed to make those repairs upon approval by the planning commission, a building permit, going through that process. We had no fee permits, but we have to go through that process. Then they can build it. The kicker is that if the city contributes funding to that same project, then that becomes a public works project, which requires prevailing wages, which is a lot more intensive. So I believe my view of it as of today is to await the city's attorney's letter, which is coming. Give Dale a call. We're also going to have a consultant guide Dale and Carmel Cares in processing that permit through the planning department. Get that approved, start building the darn thing. Because I know they're very eager and ready to build it.
Yeah, this has been a year kind of in process.
It has been a year. There's been a lot of projects that have not happened in a year.
Okay, so it sounds to me from what you're saying that this is on the
Yeah,
table, and it's just.
It's still on the
it's a
table.
matter of-
It has more.
You just didn't mention it.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's morphed a couple of times along the way.
Yep. Okay.
But there's still momentum. Carmel Cares is still eager to proceed with the
Yeah.
project. The city still has funding to do the project. But we don't have a project manager to implement the city's portion of the project. And we were quite frankly, we were unsuccessful twice. We went through 2 complete recruitment processes for a project manager to replace the one that we lost when COVID hit. We had to let someone go. We offered the job to 3 people. All 3 turned it down. One guy turned it down twice, which really kind of hurt.
But from what you're saying, we're not going to be constrained by that now. This potentially could go into Carmel Care's hands, and then they can take it and roll with it. Not subject to a project manager's hiring.
It's not subject to an in-house project manager.
Okay, great. Okay.
Yes, we want a project manager to help guide that process.
Right.
Or they could go, go on their own, but we're trying to work together.
Okay. Then the other question I had
Sure.
was, so on the beach sand issue.
Okay.
I mean, we're coming up on that timeline again where we usually move sand in where
Right.
it's been eroded. And when we talked about this last time, we were talking about the fact that we needed to have the survey done again before we could really address the sand issue. And are we saying that survey is not going to happen for another year, and so the sand doesn't get addressed again?
I hope it's not, no, that's a fair question. Nothing happened in this current fiscal year for that sand survey. We're combining that with the new $150,000 coastal engineering report to have it looked at more
So, but
comprehensively.
that report and the timing on that, it could be another 6 months to a year before that report's completed, correct?
It could be, although there's a request for qualifications for consultants already out on the street to get qualified consultants to at least submit, to get that process started. So there's a little bit more momentum than we had a year ago.
Okay, so is there going to be an opportunity to move any sand this year before as we head into May to deal with the erosion at the Del Mar slope as well as the other slope right over by the volleyball courts? Or are we going to be doing the small little, bobcat and trying to move sand for kind of do a temporary thing? I'm just trying to get informed on that. The sand's a little bit of a major issue for me because I know, as I said, going back, maybe 5 to 10 years ago, we had a giant, tractor down there moving sand in a way that really propped up the dunes and the hill, and it looked great.
Right.
And because the erosion that's happening on Del Mar is bad. I mean, and it's caused by our lack of storm drain, flow. When we do have storms, we haven't had a lot of rain this year, except in December. But if you went down Del Mar Hill right now, it's pretty eroded again, and as well as by the volleyball courts.
Right. When the tractors did the large-scale projects of years past, that was the best way to go about doing it. Those costs had increased a lot.
To rent the tractor and do that?
No, for us to hire out the contract.
Okay.
So we used to hire out a contractor, and their costs went up.
Right.
So then we said, okay, well, we'll do it in-house by renting a Bobcat or renting whatever equipment we had to do a less extensive repair, but we've been doing that for the last few years.
Right.
The current erosion is so great, we're thinking, are we even going to bother with a rental tractor or just wait till July 1st when we have more funds available?
Under the new budget?
Under the new budget. I've talked to our public works superintendent, Rob. I don't know if Rob is still on. We have a problem.
Yeah, we do.
We have a problem. We know that. No quick fix. And when we cover it with sand, it doesn't last long.
Yeah.
So I think we have a long-term solution, which is that sand survey / coastal report. That will be the long-term solution. What do we do the next few years until we have something structural to, permanently repair it?
Yeah, it's just
We don't know.
concerning as a Forest and Beach commissioner, and seeing the erosion that's going down that Del Mar Hill as well as the hill that's next to the volleyball courts. Once that erosion isn't mitigated, it's having damaging effects on that hill. And I mean, that hill is the brand of Carmel-by-the-Sea. And if we don't take care of it, and the Bobcat sand is not cutting it, I mean, and I know the message in the past has been that the city doesn't have a budget to get a tractor down there to move the sand. But the reality is the erosion has gotten so bad, and the Bobcat is not cutting it. And it's going to have a long-term impact on that hillside. And you won't be able to mitigate that with a tractor 5 years from now because there won't be a hillside to have anymore because it'll be eroded out. And it is the brand of Carmel-by-the-Sea. And I mean, I almost feel like I need to get in front of a city council meeting and say, guys, go walk the Del Mar Hill. And this is what our tourists and residents see as they walk the beach and look up. And it is a mess. And we need to spend the money to at least mitigate as best we can, whether it's a survey or get an engineer or a consultant, to say, you guys need to do something right now, or this hill's gonna just completely erode out, and Carmel Hill as we know it will no longer be there because it'll have been eroded down and it'll fall away. And I mean, I've been really concerned about this issue for a number of years now, and I've heard the budget issue and this or that, and we did the Bobcat, and the Bobcat's just not doing anything. It's not helping the issue. And I don't know how I, as a Forest and Beach Commissioner, or just as a fellow resident, get in front of the city council and say, we have got to do something here. And not waiting year over year for some survey to come up when you've got, a really, problem here. And I mean, I'm just very passionate about it because it is, I walk that beach and I look up at that hillside and I go, I'm a Forest and Beach Commissioner, and I can't have any influence on this hill. And I'm feeling like we've got a huge budget overage now. And if I have to get in front of the city council to go, guys, we need to do something about this hill, survey or no survey, what are we going to do to fix that sand situation around the volleyball courts and the Del Mar Hill? Because it is a mess. And I'll get up in front of the next city council meeting as a Forest and Beach Commissioner, as a resident, and say, we've got to do something. And as a Forest and Beach, as fellow commissioners, all I can say to you is go down there and look at it. It is a mess. And in our job and responsibilities, we're supposed to be protecting the beach. And we've got to do something. And I know your group at the volleyball courts have donated money and this or that for the Bobcat because the city didn't have the money or whatever, but something's got to be done soon. And maybe July's late. I mean, there's an opportunity to move sand now while the tidal thing is going on. And I don't think we wait to July. I mean, it's just the erosion that's going to happen between now and July is not going to be good. With all the tourists that come in and then they go down that steep slope and they erode that sandstone, and it's bad. So, I mean, I don't know, do I need to get in front of the city council? I mean, what do I need to do to try and get something going here that is impactful? And I don't think waiting for a survey with the consultants is a solution.
Well, I imagine, no doubt, all of us, first of all, appreciate your passion for it. And as of course, as do I, especially because of the volleyball courts. And I noticed the posts that we put in just a few years back, I'm already starting to see cement, which is kind of crazy in the reality of how deep we put them in. So the passion is there, and I imagine our director appreciates that and would most likely encourage you to get in front of the city council. That can only help the cause. And
I'll definitely do that. And I'm just in a public forum to reach out to the residents that watch these meetings is that we need to get action on that hillside there with some sand or some mitigation to the erosion that's going on, or it's going to be a long-term problem that will be much more costly to fix if we don't get on it soon.
I like it. Does anyone else have any questions?
Please, if I may address this a couple things, maybe make a suggestion to Commissioner Sowers. Well, we all share the concern. Certainly, there's a lot of frustration on my part because it's a problem that doesn't have an easy fix. The next city council meeting is May the 2nd, but the May the 3rd council meeting, that Tuesday night, would be the appropriate time because there is an agenda item that I'll be presented on the capital improvement plan.
Oh, okay.
There'll be a whole lot of facilities discussed.
Okay.
I would suggest that I think we should separate, or if you would like, to separate out the same issue but two parts. We have a future long-term plan.
I hear you.
We're going to do that engineering survey. We're going to combine it with the beach study. That's someday we'll get there.
Yeah, exactly.
But we have a problem today.
Right.
We don't have a solution today. So what are we going to do until we can get that, a fix, however we're going to do it, adding beach stairs or whatever. What are we going to do in the meantime?
Right.
The Bobcat helps but it's a much bigger problem.
Right. It's a much bigger problem.
It's a much bigger problem than, right. So,
Because that survey is really about the whole beach erosion
Yeah, the whole-
around
yeah,
the
the whole-
embankments. and
whole
those
way,
things.
whole way.
I'm just trying to address the Del Mar hillside and
Right.
and the volleyball hillside, because I mean, that's where you visually can see the erosion
Yep.
at a level that's well beyond any other area, except maybe further down to the south side of the beach, where you do have some
there's other areas.
underflowing from area, but
Over by, just, I guess, due west of the volleyball courts, we have the same type of problem there too.
Yeah, I mean,
But there's
Pebble-
less people walking.
And just if you be down at the north end of the beach, Pebble Beach has got some embankment that's
Yeah.
pulling away, that's concreted, and that's gonna have an impact on the golf course. I don't know if they're even aware of that, but it's pulled away and it's not good for the erosion along the golf course, but anyway, I mean.
Okay.
It's good discussion, and anything else from the commission for our director?
I just had one more sign, sorry about the beach sand thing, but I also wanted to just get an update from Bob. Where are we with the lawyer overview of our Forest and Beach Commission capabilities with regards to the topic that we were gonna have the lawyer get back to us on our authority? That was almost a year ago
Yeah,
today.
I'm looking to Sarah. In fact, we started the tree ordinance update. There's two, right now there's a tree and shrub ordinance. There's two of them. They're different and they both are incomplete. They're deficient. We did meet with the city attorneys a couple times. We have a draft, which was almost a rewrite. And then Sarah, I think somewhere in there it became, let's do the forest. I think it was by the council. Let's do the forest management plan. It was by the city council in a strategic planning session.
So the forest management plan has a line item task in it to fix all of the code related to the trees. So the authority of the commission part would get rewritten with the tree part as well. So the thought was take all of the changes once instead of piecemealing the changes across the board.
It would have been tree ordinance update, which is a big process, to refine what the commissions can and cannot do, then do the forest management plan, then have to go back to the tree ordinance again, a second time, to whatever changes were made as a result of that forest management plan. So anyway, that was discussed with the city council. They advised us, just do things once, because we have so many other citywide priorities. So that's kind of where that went. So it was not forgotten, and in fact, I could send you the draft of it, but
I guess at the end of the ball game, what are we talking timeline where we could potentially understand the authority that we have that we were interested in getting better defined and legally defined?
So CAL FIRE is about to award the grant. So as soon as.
For forest management plan.
For the forest management plan. So as soon as that's awarded and as soon as we hire the firm that will be drafting all of that, we could task them out of the gate to work on that code. So in theory, maybe July or August, there could be actually some materials to review. And that's a fast timeline.
That's incredibly fast.
Changing the law takes a long time.
We're
It's a long
changing
process,
the law, though, are we? Are we changing the law?
We are.
Yeah.
We're changing the ordinance.
Ordinance is the law.
Okay. Okey-doke.
Okay, great. I'll just briefly put it out to the public if there's any public comment regarding our director's presentation. I don't know if anyone's still with us.
Whistle away.
Everybody's battery on their phone died. If not, then I'm sure I speak on behalf of the entire commission in welcoming our director back. We missed you. So, I know that those of us who are here are happy to be back in chambers. So, two really good things have happened today. And for future agenda items, it sounded like there were a couple of things that were noted. Do we need to review those?
No, I think I got it all during
Okay.
the discussion about data collection.
Well, then with that, I will call our adjournment, and happy Easter, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Oh, wait, sorry, Yvette?
Have a great weekend.
Oh, okay, bye.
We cannot hear you.
How much money does